Call to order our Town Commission budget meeting of September the 6th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Please call the roll. Want to make sure nobody ran out.
Mayor Tompeck,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kurzman. Please let the record reflect that Vice Mayor Kurzman is not present. Commissioner Campo? Still here. Commissioner Fender?
Also still here.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Here.
Okay, I don't have any public comments. No public comment cards.
No, sir.
Motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Campo? Aye. Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck?
Yes. That brings us down to item 4, public hearing. Announcement of the percentage by which the adopted tentative millage rate exceeds the rollback rate. Mariah, are you ready for your presentation? I'm sorry, Mr. Dennis, do you want to lead off?
I'll just start, and then we'll have Mariah here to back me up, I guess. I think the key thing tonight on setting the proposed millage rate, and as you know, we haven't changed the millage rate, but we do deal with, as the memo says, the proposed millage rate of 3.27 mils is greater than the rollback rate of 2.9875 mils by 9.46%. So to decipher all that, it basically, we have to report even the change in the evaluation of our properties. As we know, we had I think it was like an 11% jump, was it,
Correct.
Mariah?
Yes.
On the values of the properties that are taxed by ad valorem taxes within the town of Sewalls Point. So the 3.27 is the combination of both millage rates, the regular millage rate of 2.8, what's the?
2.87, and then the
2.87, and then the 0.4 millage rate for our special projects, namely the resiliency projects on Sewalls Point Road. So with that, now I also, you have here, because the budget itself is the 24 budget that we're talking about for this millage rate. So if you recall, when we went through the main budget meeting that we had last, we had the different columns for the different years. We still have that. If you want to refer to that, I can also pull it up on the screen. But really, the one that affects the millage rate is what our budget is for 2024. And that's why that's the one that was supplied with the resolution.
Okay, Mariah, do you have something to add, or?
So the first thing that, and the town manager did mention the required statutory language that we had. That was taken care of. We do need to adopt the millage, tentative millage rate first, and then adopt the tentative budget. There was there was 2 changes. I think we noticed at the very end of our budget workshop meeting. I went ahead and the transfer of $344,000 from the general fund into the capital fund, that's that 0.4 millage portion. In the capital fund, it had $412,000 being transferred in, which included some monies for the police department remodel. We're going to hold on that money into the general fund, so we're just reflecting $344,000 right now, basically from the general fund to the capital fund. And then the ARPA money, and this is just referring to the detailed budget, there was ARPA monies, 557, let's see here. And I took that out because the town has actually already received that. So that's basically down on the reserve utilization line. So we'll be using a portion of that. We'll be using a portion of millage going into our capital projects in 2024.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Quick question about that. The
American Rescue Grant going from 557,450 to 625,595.
So in there, that's basically the difference between the 344 as well. So we have
Oh,
that.
that was you fixed,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Okay, that brings us up to resolution number 964, adopting the tentative millage rate for 2023-2024. The town clerk, please read the resolution title into the record.
A resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, adopting the tentative millage rate for the Town of Sewalls Point for the fiscal year commencing on October 1st, 2023, and ending on September 30th, 2024, and providing an effective date and other purposes.
Thank you. Is there any, you have any comments from the public on this item? Seeing none. Comments from the commission? Commissioner Fender?
I was just asking town manager if he could give me a copy of what's on the screen now, and it looks like he has, so I don't really need to have that pressed.
Mayor, I think we could approve the tentative tax rate and then have another item going through the budget. Would that be appropriate?
Yeah, actually, it's the way it's
All
set
right,
up.
so
I
then,
think. Yeah.
then I'll move that resolution approval.
Have a second?
I'll second it, and you can, I'll wait my button for next time.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes,
Mayor Tompeck?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
All right, so that will bring us up to resolution numbers 965, adopting the tentative operating budget for 2023-2024. Would the town clerk please read the resolution title into the record?
Resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, adopting the tentative budget for the Town of Sewalls Point for the fiscal year commencing on October 1st, 2023, and ending on September 30th, 2024, and providing an effective date and other purposes.
Okay, Mr. Daniels?
Again, as I have it up on the screen too, the document that we went through at the last budget hearing, just so you can utilize it, but pretty much aside from the changes that Mariah just covered, you know, it's the way that we had it at our last meeting. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you wish to add anything?
Nope, that's
We're
what
prepared
we
to
did.
answer any questions
Okay.
if you have
If
it.
there's any.
Commissioner Mayfield?
yes, this is a little bit of a different topic. I had mentioned it to the town manager in the past, and it's not totally related to approving the budget, because I'm hoping that it could already be somewhere in it, but I wanted to talk about it as we enter a new year. Speed limits. I always kind of harbored the idea, listening to residents and how long it's going to take to actually do all the construction, because I know people had mentioned the idea of lowering the speed limits, and I didn't think that was something that would be addressed till after we do all the work. But the idea of the speed limit signs with the solar thing to tell your speed, I think there are some non-fans of this idea out there, but I think that could be something that would help the residents that do care about this subject know that we're listening and to really pay attention during all this construction. So that, two, just one on each side. I don't know if that's anywhere that could be worked into the budget, how much they cost, but that's something I've been thinking about. It keeps popping back up into my head. So I wondered, is it super expensive? Is it not?
I have
Is it-
somebody working on some grant funds
Okay, you had said
on
that.
it, so I'd be able, at our next meeting, I can report back to it.
You
So-
said that, and, okay, thank you. And I wanted to make sure the other commissioners weren't totally opposed, or, no. All right.
Commissioner Campo?
Yeah, I'd like to go line by line through this entire budget, okay? We've approved the 2.87 plus the .4, but we really haven't gone through this. I met, it was, the formats have confused me. And I'd also like to integrate because we also have to do the position and pay ranges. And that was something that's not in tonight's notebook. It was in, I don't know if anyone brought last meeting's notebook, but that's where all the detail was. And at that meeting, we were told, you know, this is just to get things started, but we don't have that. So I need to really sink my teeth into the meat of this. I'm confused on some of these numbers, and I'm glad that the format is set up that we're comparing the years, but you know, when I see the 2021 to 2022 activity, and then there's blank lines next to that, that's confusing. The general fund, is this set up like not a P&L, but is this set up as a income and expense format? Because I see a loan proceeds as income, which is confusing. I see building permit fees, $778,000, which seems unusual. I see a lot of the salaries are being grouped together, so I don't know what the building official is making, what his staff is getting, what the finance director is getting. I just think there's a lack of specificity, and we have to look back now to the salary. So I think the best thing to do is just to go through line by line, and if there's any significant difference between what has trended in the past, explain that to us. And if it's a change of formats, like the 778 building permit fees, that's something that just needs to be explained. So if it's a change in format, it's one thing. If it's a significant change because of the operations, the 2.87 and the 0.4, commissioners, that has been established. The only thing we're establishing now is, are we going to spend that money for capital improvements or operating expenses? And we all want to spend as much money on capital improvements while keeping our talented, experienced staff, you know, engaged. But I asked the question this week, how much money do we have for capital improvements? I know it's been a long time, but there's a lot of, I'm going to throw out a couple words you haven't heard for a while: septic to sewer. Okay? We're talking about expanding septic to sewer, but what about paving the road in the STA, in the capital improvement project, and going out for rebidding? That's what I wanted to do. That was the number one thing on everybody's list, is paving South Sewalls Point Road. The more money we spend on operating, the less money is available for the capital improvement projects. So if we can carve out of these operating expenses money that we can put into the capital improvements, then we're going to get some capital improvements. If not, we've got 1.3 million, is what the finance director said, and a project that's, I think, $20 million. So
I'm sorry, what's the 1.3 million for?
I asked the finance director, how much cash do we have on hand for capital improvements? Now, we did a capital improvement budget where the wish list was 23 million. Now, we're trying to get all sorts of outside grants. We're going to put in the pipe for the septic to sewer, but we haven't had a discussion about what the strategy moving ahead on paving the road is for a long time. We have Mrs. Riley's property that we're paying interest on, and that clock is ticking. We're now making big payments. We need to look through this budget to figure out how we can spend money on capital improvements, because we've only got 1.3 million, according to the finance director's recent memo to me. So tonight's the night. Tonight is the most important night because it's where you do all the heavy lifting of the budget. And I am confused by the different formats and the salaries, and I don't know, we have a low, a mid, and a high. What are we paying people? I don't see that information. So I think the best thing is just to go through line by line, like I had said earlier.
Let me ask a kind of a general question here to make sure I understand what you're talking about, James, and also Mariah. You know, when I looked through this, I looked through the first page on Exhibit A, which listed all the revenues, and it listed the revenues against the, I'll call them business units, but general fund, building fund, capital fund. And then later on, you've got the expenditures, the expected expenditures for those items. Now, if you look at those, and you take the non-ad valorem revenues, in other words, the gas tax second option, building department, road improvement, and you look at those, and, that adds up to, and that's really the only capital money I think we have, other than what's in the grants.
Well, we have the balance sheet.
Well, I'm just saying, in this budget, when I look at this budget, the only revenue we have that goes into the capital budget is the gas tax, second local option, building department, road improvement. That's all I see is revenue there, okay? And then I look at the expenditures, and I'm talking about non-project expenditures that are assigned as expenses to the capital projects fund, stormwater outfall maintenance, streetlights and sign maintenance, street maintenance, bridge maintenance, tree maintenance, landscaping. That really takes all the money we have from capital. So I look at this, I don't think we have any capital budget. Unless I'm missing something, I don't see any capital budget here at all. And I think that's why we recognized we needed to do something a couple of years ago and said, hey, we need to have some capital money to handle some of these things that come up specifically associated with the stormwater projects. Now, did I miss anything, or did I just not understand what I'm seeing here?
No, we
I'm
passed,
sorry, not an accountant, I know that for sure.
we passed a capital, I think we called it a CIP, capital improvement, I don't know what the piece.
Projects.
Projects. So I don't know if that's a budget?
No, that's
No.
not a budget.
Okay, but that's a CIP, okay?
CIP, that's a wish list.
That's a wish list. We have Kim Delaney, we have all the charrettes and poles, and the number one thing was paving South Sewalls Point Road to prevent flooding. Commissioner Kurzman has been beating the table on that. So how much money do we have to spend of ours on capital improvement project for South Sewalls Point Road? I mean, rather than expand septic to sewer, when everyone says the number one issue is the road,
Mayor?
what's that number?
Mr. Mayfield.
Yes, I feel like we need to remember that right now, this budget, and Mariah, correct me if I'm wrong, the thing that we are required to approve is the profit and loss. That's what we refer to for the governmental budget, and it has to be zero-based. You're not supposed to show a profit, correct? And so when you're talking about how much money do we have to spend, to me, that speaks more of the balance sheet, which would be things you have saved, like money. And then you also have cash, but cash can sit there but already be committed to something else. So I'm not always sure that your cash balance is the best judge of what you have to spend. It's really the fund balance, like your retained earnings of sorts, please stop me at any moment, that would be stuff that's sitting there available for use. Now, obviously, in the budget, you could cut expenses and increase revenue to get more stuff for capital projects, but in terms of like looking at this, it's always going to equal zero. And to the mayor's point, the capital project stuff is set aside with the money that we voted to put for capital projects, that 344,000. So I'm not necessarily, I agree with you, it's important to make sure you're not being wasteful in your spending and try to allot some, but I'm not sure, and maybe Mariah could answer this, in your general fund, are you supposed to try to make a profit to pay for capital projects? Is that how does that work?
No, you're not, basically, you're not trying to make a profit. I think,
Well, if I may, too, just, we have to remember, we do have reserve funds.
That's what,
And
yeah, that's
that-
what I meant, the fund balance.
Right.
That's your reserves.
So we have the ARPA funds that we've set
Yeah.
aside, and we also have the .4 mils that has been set aside. Now, we will be spending some of that money this year.
Right.
To be quite honest with you, that's why we did the .4 mils assessment, and we have a need to spend that money on Sewalls Point Road this year,
And it's
with
in-
Phase
it's
3
right
coming
here.
in. Correct.
Which is shown as money that was quote, saved up from ARPA or saved up from the millage rate increase to spend on capital projects. So in that sense, that's what, at least we're doing what we said we're doing. We're spending the money on capital projects. So I just want to make us feel better that we have been preparing in the past, and it looks like we're preparing. But yes, I do agree, it's always prudent to make sure your expenses are not wasteful in your general fund, in your,
Correct,
okay.
yes.
And my recollection on the capital improvement plan was that you keep talking about Sewalls Point Road, South Sewalls Point Road being the first priority. It wasn't. That's not what I recall. I recall, Phase 2 of the, or maybe it's Phase 3, I can't remember which was first.
Yeah.
I know we don't want to get started on that, right? But we had those phases. It wasn't
Phases of what?
phases of the stormwater.
Of South Sewalls Point
Right,
Road.
so that's already there. That's already covered by grants, so
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about when
Not
you.
covered by grants.
That's what it shows in our budget. I mean, we have stuff that you're correct, we have matching, but that was kind of why I was emphasizing the millage. I always was under the understanding that was kind of our contribution to the matching. That was our efforts to commit to the capital projects. That's what we told everybody, that's what we did, and that's our skin in the game. That's the money that we are taking from the taxpayers to help pay for our capital projects.
So the excess revenue that is not spent on operating, we could call it retained earnings, that money
AI.
builds the reserves. Those reserves can be expended for capital improvement
Right.
projects.
And,
Right.
and they're right here, right? Isn't that what reserve utilization
Well,
is?
yes, and I think what Commissioner Camp was referring to, the general fund reserves versus capital reserves.
Right, so, yeah.
So,
And out of general fund, again, not to interrupt you, but general fund, with the building fund, there is a reserve in the
Right.
building side, because we can't make a profit. So if that
Right.
money's not spent over a period of time, then,
Right.
we can't utilize it. So,
But at any given moment, you should just be able to go look at your balance sheet in that area and see what's available or what kind of balance is sitting there. Is that
Yes.
correct?
yes, and
Yeah.
at that time, I
That's
think what you could do is, as the projects begin or happen, if there is additional funds that are needed, you could take from your general fund.
So my
General
question,
opinion
the
balance.
question that I have and the question I've asked
Yes.
is, how much money do we have in the capital fund and the general fund that's excess that we can spend on capital improvement projects? That's my question. The prices came in higher than we expected. Where's it going to come from? Okay, maybe we borrow some, maybe we get grants, but how much money do we have to pay for our own stuff? It's not that hard of a question. So-
Right now, it's the 1.3 is what's in the capital fund,
Right,
and that money is made up of the ARPA money and the
Right.
millage money. And so,
and the general funds,
in the general fund, and here's where it's hard, and I have been working on that, I just haven't completed it just yet, but with property tax, basically with our ongoing expenses, like in August and September, we don't have any big revenues. Our largest revenue is property tax. And so, we're taking that excess money and it's being used on ongoing expense for August and September. So doing a cash flow statement, and, I did go back in and look at what was presented to the commission last year, as well as what was presented to the commission the prior year, trying to figure out, okay, cash flow purposes, money, where everything is coming from. And so,
and the number was what?
Well, so if you go back to
well, you said it was 1.3 million.
yeah, it's 1.3 million in the capital fund.
Right.
So
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so.
what you're saying is you want to use general fund monies to, and that's going to be a policy decision.
Well, I mean, it's got to come from somewhere, right? I mean, we've got to come up with this money from somewhere. And if we borrow the money, then we've got to, service the debt. So I think it's important, as, we spent all this time with the CIP coming up with 23 million, and people were like, well, how are you going to come up with that? How much of our own money is going to be available? Because the prices came in higher than we expected. So when I was mayor, and I think in several of our mayors, at the end of the year, we had excess money that goes into the reserves to build up. So my question is, how much is that number? What's the number?
So right now, and this is, I'm going just off the top of my head right now. So we put $200,000 extra that was remaining into the fire department increase. We are planning, and I will come back once we have September expenses in, to basically say, okay, depending on what the excess is for fiscal year '23, we will put up to $200,000 into the fire restricted. We have $1 million in there right now that is for emergency purposes, hurricane or that. We have $500,000 set aside for operational. And so I would have to look to see what that net.
Maybe I can add some clarity.
Commissioner Fender.
So I hope, first of all, our goal is to approve the budget tonight? Is that-
The
is that what
tentative.
we're-
The tentative budget.
Tentative budget, okay.
We're not going to be done tonight.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So I think, thanks for your great work. I think the numbers are here. I think the totals, line up. I think what Commissioner Campo's asking for now is to maybe start at the high level, and then we can drill in as deep as you want. You went way down in the weeds really quickly, but I think we need to start high and focus in on which line items of the budget that we eventually want to approve stand out. And so, which is why I asked for the multi-year trend, because what I look for is trend deviations. And so I think all the questions that will be asked and answered will be in the stars next to the things that say, oh, look, like on the line you're showing now, of all the revenues, for some reason, we're $2 million less this year compared to last year. There's a reason for it, I'm sure, but I think probably in the explanation of you coming up to give the presentation would say, I want you to know, last year we had a budget of 5.3 mil. You'll notice this year it's actually shows 3.4 million. Let me point you at the asterisks for why that is. We have 2 million in our Seacoast Bank note, which is not reflected in this year's committed budget because I moved it to X. I don't know, I'm putting words in your mouth. But my point is, if you could just walk us through the high level and the line items that reach us to 21 million at the bottom, and why that's a $5 million difference? Where's the bottom line? I just want to see the difference in trend and where the big jumps are from 2 years ago, last year, and this year, so we can get an understanding of the things that are jumping out, which will eventually illuminate what James is asking for, which is, okay, this is our capital budget fund, and you'll notice that it increased $300,000 from last year to this year because of all the stuff you said earlier. I don't know, but I would love for you guys to walk us through to his point of, I'm not going to say line item by line item, I'm going to say high-level bulleted list revenue and the buckets of expenditures and how they've changed significantly from a percentage basis year over year, right? And then we'll notice, oh, here's a thing that's changed 20%. That seems significant, or whatnot. We just really at our level, I think we need to know where the buckets are so we can redirect policy.
Yes. So starting with the revenues, and I thought we did this at the budget workshop, so I apologize if
We may have.
we didn't, but, obviously our largest revenue is property tax, ad
Yeah.
valorem taxes.
And I
So-
see it's up 300,000, right?
Yep. Everything pretty much down the line, planning and zoning fees, you can see we had 22,000 in the 2023 budget. I did 5,000 current activity and the reason I did 5,000 was because you look at our current activity and we're at 7,000. So I'm a firm believer you don't inflate your revenues to balance your budget. So that's
Okay.
then, as you continue on down, yes, you will see, well, actually, let's go back up to where the building permit fees are. In 2023, the town made the decision to split off into three different, basically take the operating budget and split it into three separate funds. So we have the operating fund, which is the general fund. We have the
So can I
building.
stop you there?
Yes.
You're talking about the 778, right?
Correct.
And obviously, it's empty to the right of that. So I assume that 778 is now split into three areas, you just said?
That money went into the building
Can you
fund.
point me at the line item?
Building fund, it's going to be on the, let's see here, it's going to be on page 5, I think. Yep, page 5 of yours, Bob.
Okay, it's up now on the screen.
Okay. So on page 5, building permits. And this is where, once again, this is coming from the actual software,
So this page is building permit fund. which
Yes, this is the
okay.
building permit
All right.
fund. And currently, through July, we've received 433,000. Now, in 2022, the town did receive 778,000. You know, so it's just, that's based on building trends. Once again, you need to be cautious when budgeting. You don't want to inflate that revenue source to make your budget balance. Does that make sense?
It does.
So,
And if you look while you're on the building, if you look at the expenses balance out to what the income is, which is what we have to show. We can't make
Sure.
money out of the building department.
so going back to the general fund revenue, another basically larger, I would say decrease is on the interest.
What page you on?
Where's that?
I'm on page 1. I'm back on the general fund.
All right.
Revenues.
Let me know. So
Oh, sorry. So down below, you'll see a $50,000, you'll see, you got the $250,000 for sales tax, and then you scroll down, you have your traffic fines, with the police department stuff, but then there's 50,000. And we amended the budget to 125, we've received 134. Depending on cash flow purposes and what interest rates do, I budgeted 50,000. Once again, being on the conservative side, that if there's additional revenues that come in from interest, obviously, that will just increase our ending fund balance, as long as it's, we don't overspend our expenses. So that, then the biggest difference is that $2 million. Last year, or in this fiscal year '23, we received $2 million from a bank note. And so that's the Seacoast bank note to buy the property. So we're not projecting another bank loan at this
And
time.
that's already been expended on the property.
That's already been, yes, that's been, and we do have payments in the general fund going toward that loan.
Okay.
So is there any
Can
questions?
you point me out that?
What's that?
Can you point me at those payments going towards that property in the,
Yes,
Okay.
if you go to page 2,
yep,
under Department 517, you will see the debt service. In '23, we only had one payment. In '24, we will have two payments. Our payments are,
517, okay.
yeah, so we have the principal and the interest on that loan. And what the town dedicated to pay that was sales tax. That's what we used to secure that loan.
All right, so I think I understand, unless something else jumps out like that, if you're going to continue on down. I'll let you continue, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, until we get to capital projects fund, which is what I'd like to focus on after you get to the bottom of general fund.
So are there any other questions on the revenues for the general fund?
Not for me.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. We move down to the next, basically.
The last line in the general fund revenue, amended budget, okay, currently, we are anticipating adding to the reserves 212,000.
Correct.
Okay, that's in the current year. So, I mean, that's the big question that I have, is make sure that I know what that number is for fiscal year '24.
So with the current budget in fiscal year '24, your expenses match your revenues. the way they sit right now.
Okay, all right, so let's, we'll put a footnote into that until we get into Fund 301 capital projects.
Can I just quickly ask where that 212 came from?
So that came from basically in what was budgeted last year for additional reserves. So I don't want to call it income, but leftover fund balance.
Okay.
Retained earnings?
See, we're only allowed by statute to allow for a 95% collection of ad valorem tax, but our residents are so responsible, we get it 100%. And that extra is
Understood.
normally carried over and hopefully continuing to accumulate in the capital fund so that when we come up with, or general fund, so that when we need it, you know, it will be there for projects. But let's continue
Yeah.
on from the general fund.
Okay. So then we have, so basically down below, we have the executive department. And
Who is that?
so in the executive department, you have the town manager. But the town manager salary is broken out into the general fund, the building fund, and I don't have those percentages with me.
Because I
We do-
supervise the building department and the official ultimately, I'm in charge of everything. So I'm allowed to take a percentage of my salary out of the building fund as part of their expenses.
And the same thing is with basically with a few other employees.
Yeah, well, I understand us doing that, but it doesn't add transparency. I mean, obviously, we spent a lot of time on this ad nauseum with,
It's in here.
yeah. But the,
When we get back to the building fund expenses, you'll see the amount of money that's coming out.
for each staff person?
Not each staff person, but we can run a separate program for you. We,
I-
you know, we weren't prepared to go through each staff member line by line. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this budget process, we were following the lead that what you all set last year when Dan was here. So if you wanted anything changed, we're more than happy to do that. We were just kind of
Yeah.
following a process
Yeah.
that you all instituted with Dan. But if you want to go through and see everybody's salary as an individual, it's a public document, and you can do that, and,
I think the question you're asking is the same question I asked last year. I didn't understand how the salaries were allocated between the different funds. And there are percentages, and Mariah can certainly provide you with those.
yeah, we can do that report, and at the next budget meeting, we're more than happy to
Yeah.
report it publicly. We're not covering anything. I mean, we
Can I-
are
Wait,
transparent.
I just want to add that that's good accounting practice to try to get the most exact representation of where the money is going and where it's getting expended as opposed to what each person is getting. So it's a good accounting practice, but maybe it's not what, you know, you would think a resident's looking for, what you want to see. So it's not like it's trying, to your point, that's just a good practice.
Yeah, it's a normal practice within municipalities. So that basically, you know, percentage,
Can I ask?
different positions are broken out by percentages throughout different areas.
Can I ask about the health insurance line? I noticed it's significantly less than I would expect.
We had some changes in staffing, so I think that had some of the allocations on it. We did have a 4%.
No, if you're looking at the executive under line 4,
Yeah.
okay,
Oh,
that's because I understand that it might be practice, but going from 87,000 to 21,000 is not real. That's just because they're reallocating.
Okay, well, that's the
That's-
answer. I mean, I'm okay if that's the answer.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Right.
all right.
We split up the funds. so
Okay.
that-
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's hard to get that to aggregate and
Okay.
see what the number is, so it's,
As we move forward until when you do fiscal year '25,
You should be able to show me where it's aggregated to, though, right?
so,
I mean, just in general, I would like to see how much health insurance increased year over year. You know, I don't care about the person, I care about the price increase.
okay.
so you'd have to go through each department then and add that up.
Sounds like they just want like a payroll report
That's,
or something.
So insurance, this year it was projected to, we were originally estimating a 10% increase. What others around Florida have seen were 15%, 25%, I mean, large increases. And ours came in, I have it in the budget in a brief,
I think it was
4%.
4.3.
Yeah, it was
It was a lot lower than
surprisingly
what we were expecting.
lower than, yes,
All right.
much lower than what we were expecting, so.
Ultimately, my question's simple. We paid $87,000 in 2021. I'm curious what we're paying in health insurance for executives in 2024, you know?
No, actually, we paid way more
You-
because you've got to add that for each of these different departments. So you have to add the health insurance
You're
for,
saying in 2021 and 22, it was
So-
also split across?
So health insurance was all up there except for the PD. You have PD that had health insurance, but I believe all the health insurance was basically paid out of that one line.
That's what I was saying. That's why I would think it would be
Right.
less, because I don't think in 2021 it was.
in order to compare it, it's very difficult.
Yeah, it wasn't,
All you really need is a pivot table here.
Yeah.
You could-
well,
You can figure the whole thing out in about 5 minutes.
and the hard part is because there was a couple different things that happened in fiscal year '23. You went from one fund to 3 funds.
Well, that was actually in 22, wasn't it?
No, '22, you still had one fund.
Okay.
So in '23, you went from one fund to 3 funds. The other thing that happened was the reallocation of things, or how things were being, in previous years, things were just lumped in one department. So trying to truly reflect where the costs are truly associated with. An example, finance has, you got finance, you have legal, everything, a lot of the expenses you'll see in Department 519, there was a lot there that we broke out in, during the budget year of fiscal year '23. So there was a lot of moving parts during last budget season, and I think once we move forward, like I said, when you go to budget '25, it will be easier to, and I don't want to say have '22 activity, the fiscal year '22 fall off, but for comparison reasons, you'll have fiscal year '23, you'll see the current '24, and you'll start to build that consistency across the years to be able to see those changes.
So are they aggregated across how many groupings? I see executive, I see police, I see finance, I see legal,
Building,
and building. That's 4, right? Or is that 5?
For health insurance or
For
just
for
different?
all things, I would assume. Health insurance would be just an example. I assume they're all done about the
Yes.
same, right? Yeah. So it's five groups of,
So basically you have your executive department, you've got your finance department, you have your legal department.
yep.
Those are departments, though, not funds, correct?
Well, that's what you're splitting your salaries and your expenses,
So then you've got
HR.
governmental services, which is kind of the oversight of
what was that one?
governmental
Oh,
services.
government, okay, that's a thing, all right.
And then you have police. And that's all within the general fund.
And
That's
building.
5.
And then you
Well,
have the
building's
building
separate,
fund,
Yeah, but that's 6, right? Okay.
and there is no salaries in the capital fund.
Right. Makes sense, yeah. All right, so 5 in general and 1 in building, I guess?
And I think to answer,
Not
if you
even
go to, it doesn't, I was just going to say, it doesn't necessarily show it.
Okay, well, at least
By
I
building
understand
fund
the
and-
process now, so that's good. All right.
Yeah. So it's not. So. Anything that does kind of cross over, well, in the summary, in the budget of all funds, in that attachment A, you do have like a summary column on the far right. So just for fiscal year 2024.
Is it unusual, or should we, is it a red flag that the building fund is lower this year than last year? Am I reading it incorrectly? I see it's significantly up from 2022, but it seems pretty flat from 2023.
So you have, so in talking with the building permit, or the building official, he felt comfortable with estimating like revenue at 430,000, and then the technology fee there. So basically 429,000. Yes, I see what you're saying. The budget was 379 and we're going to 429. There was salaries we talked about. That was a total of 5% increase in the salaries.
I think my point is, I would expect, just giving housing what it is and building permits what it is, that the price might increase year over year, 5% or 10% or something. Why would we flatline it? Or,
So-
there's probably a reason.
So-
The mortgage rates are now 8%.
Okay, I mean, I'll buy that, yeah. Okay, so we're, as a budgetary entity, expecting a flatline building permit revenue.
Conservatively,
Scenario.
Conservative.
right.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
We
okay.
do have a lot of home buyers out there from talking to some realtors
All
that pay cash, so really the mortgage rates.
Understood.
Looking at that,
So based on all that, unless James has more detail he needs to get to, I mean, that takes us to the capital fund, right?
Yeah, let me just jump in to try to save some
Mr.
time.
Campo, Commissioner Mayfield, you have something?
I think that was from before.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
You refer to me. So I would like to have aggregated the total payrolls of all staff, not non-police, and then set aside police. We can aggregate them, and I'd like to see that compared to fiscal year 22, 23, and what you propose for 24. You can aggregate them. And the health insurance, because those are the two biggies.
And if you're going to go to that detail, I would love to see a column with just a percentage number to the right, so it would make life a little easier.
And that's just a separate thing you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, people are looking at us and saying, hey, we've had 11% increase in tax base. Does the bureaucracy just suck that in and absorb it? And what happens if the economy goes south? I'd like to say we're keeping salaries and operating expenses level, or we're spending the extra money on buying extra stuff. You know, I think it's pretty fundamental to not just take that 11% raise and, you know, feed the monster, but instead have something to show for it. So I'd like to talk to the public and say, this is what salaries were 2 years ago, last year, and what we're planning for this year. And this is the health insurance.
so in 2020,
Well, let's put it together so we
okay.
have it.
Well, I was just
I
going to
don't
say,
wanna-
last year was an 8%,
Well, that's the
No,
overall.
the aggregate,
what the dollar
the
is.
aggregate number.
Right.
so.
The aggregate number. I know, as an example, the police department may have had an unfilled position or two, so it would be good to see actual 22, you know, as close to actual or 23, and then plan for 24.
And you want the police department included in,
You could break it out, you could aggregate the whole department if it makes it easier. I'm not trying to make it.
Okay, do you have any other, I mean, you're looking, really kind of want an offline,
Yeah,
I mean,
because.
that's not going to change, not necessarily change anything in here.
Well, it's going to change the way I may or may not vote, because I understand we've changed the way to more genuine fund accounting. I get that, and I know that's how governments do it. But when I look at the public, I'd like to say, this is, you know, what we're spending on salaries and benefits, and not interrupt what you're trying to do with, you know, going with the fund accounting. I 100% know that you're not doing anything, you know, non-transparent. I know you're doing it because that's how fund accounting works, and but it's hard.
Yeah.
To look at the public and say, look, well, it's 40% of his salary is over here and 30% is over there. But I'd like to look and say, we got an 11% raise because of increased property tax rolls. And we gave 5% raise and, just basic stuff like that. And then we can talk about the building, and the capital. And then we can kind of fast forward. Does that make sense?
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, I just wanted to, you're saying 11% raise with the increase. I just want to clarify, I think it's 9.46 is our actual increase. Just don't make it higher than it is.
No, someone said 11.
He said 11 for the
property
values,
values,
but because of
right.
homestead and whatnot, it's
Okay,
actually only
okay,
9.46.
okay.
At least it's under
Thank
10.
you for clarifying.
Yes, thank you for that.
Okay, did you want to go over the 301 fund?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mariah,
Mainly
would you do
just to
that?
drill on what James is asking about,
Yeah.
ultimately.
Can you run us through that,
Okay.
page 6?
So, on the capital projects fund, basically, we've got our gas taxes that come in. We have, and those stays pretty much status quo, just a difference on GL lines there, flip-flopping. The American Rescue Grant, like I said, that was already received, so there's no monies there. The grant monies that we have in there, some are already awarded, and then there's a few that are still, we're still proceeding to ask for more additional funds, but that's what the 4.9 million is, the 8.6 for the Resilient Florida one, and then we've got, hopefully we'll be receiving 185,000 next year after we're done with the commercial to septic to sewer, as that's wrapping up. The legislative appropriations is $1 million. We were awarded that. We have not received that just yet. And then the same thing, Martin County has agreed to, pay for the water lines. So we have that. The reserve utilization, right now, we're looking at possibly using $325,000 of the millage to help fund one of our projects, and then the difference for using ARPA monies as well. We do have to have, some monies that we match. We've got the $344,000 that we're transferring in. It is different than the amended budget for '23. You'll see the 2.3 million. 2 million was transferred from the general fund for the loan. That's what that difference is. Going down into engineering, budgeted 75,000 just for regular, engineering items. And then 48,000 for landscaping. I don't know if Bob wants to speak to the landscaping item or not, but
Yeah, I can. Just to let you all know what's going on. Our current contractor, his contract is up and we can renew it, but he has a problem meeting the terms of the agreement that he had signed. Dennis. So we're now in a position where we put out an RFP, and we're looking, instead of getting invoices in here and invoices there, we're looking for more what we call a concierge service. So it's one price for the month. And this is your scope of work. And if you break a sprinkler pipe, you fix the sprinkler pipe. We don't get a bill for you for doing it. Or if there's mulch and you're required to, spend the money and buying the mulch and the labor, so it's all spelled out, very detailed, and we're in that process right now.
so. Then we've got basically stormwater expenses that are budgeted for right now. The major thing there is, yes, we don't have the $1 million for land and $1 million for building improvements. So We do have 3.2 million budgeted for stormwater improvements. That's part of Phase 3. And that's kind of the portion of the projects that would be considered stormwater. And then down below, you'll see 13.9, which is more for the roads that go along with the stormwater projects. So,
Commissioner Campo?
Well, this is getting to the point that we're all excited about, and this is what we've been talking about. So with Joe here, and I don't know who's, I'll just ask the manager to direct, what's the 3.2 and what's the 13.9? And what's the breakdown of those projects? And please don't use phases and stages. Please use streets for me. It's
Okay.
easier for me to.
Well, the Pineapple to Ridgeland, which are the streets, AKA a third of something, I won't say phase, but as you know, the bids were too high, so we split up. The strategy was splitting up the project, doing the underground work first, so we don't miss out. You know, it was like a 440-day project originally, so we were hoping by keeping the momentum going, we would, enter into an agreement with a contractor that won the bid, which in this case was Jamie Underground. We get the interlocal agreements straightened out for the sewer line and for the water main, which we're in the process of doing, and hopefully on the 26th of September, we'll have the approval from the county, which in my conversations with the county administrator, he doesn't see any problem with those being approved. And then we get the paperwork we need from DEP on the grant, which they've told us we should have by September 20th. Then getting the contract together with Jamie Underground, which you all will have to vote on October the 10th, and hopefully sometime in the month of November, they can start work. Is that pretty much still the timetable we're working on, Joe? Good. So that covers the underground portion of that project in that area, and of course, as we've all been through with the septic to sewer, there's more to it that takes us up to Ocean Boulevard. So that's that section. Now, once we get this out of the way, Joe's in the process of formulating another bid. We're hoping that costs have lowered to some extent, or at least flattened out, so we know what the expectation can be. And we're hoping that by going out again, casting that net for somebody that's just going to be doing the paving and the STA and basically the stormwater part of the project. So we're hoping, since that's more of an expertise than the underground work, we save some money on the underground work by bidding it out ourselves. And if we can do the same thing with the contractor for the paving and the stormwater services that we need done, we're hoping we're going to come in lower than what the costs were before. And so I know Joe's been in the process of getting ready to do that bid process. So we're hoping that by the time Jamie Underground finishes, which is going to roughly be February, March timeframe, that we'll be set to go with everything that we needed. And of course, you all will know the progress of that because we have to bring that contract back to you, the results of the RFP, and then also the contract for that work to be done for the roadway and the stormwater. And so we're looking at the project being another year-long project. But as Joe and I have talked, our game plan is once we get that one set up, then we want to work on phase 2, because we promised those folks that, and they've been very patient, with our cost overruns. So, I'm sorry, I said phase. I apologize. Pineapple to Henry Sewalls. In that section of the project, we want to go through, and a lot depends right now is the design work for that. And we have that RFQ out for engineering firms, and, that phase 2 will be covered under that RFQ, whichever the decision is that we make on that process. And if I recall, That process ends about the middle of this month, the 18th, is it? Yes, 18th, and then we'll be back reporting to you on the 26th what those results were from the RFQ. So that's another piece I forgot to mention for that section of Henry Sewalls to Pineapple. So, but we want to move right along then and get that design work going. So once we start moving on the area from Pineapple to Ridgeland, we can get set to do the permitting and the bidding and be ready to go for that section from Pineapple to Henry Sewalls. So we will have two projects running at the same time.
Right.
But we want to try to get that done. And while we're talking about that too, it's kind of a little bit off the subject, but I think I shared with the commission a email that we got in reference to the legislative delegation meeting, and we are being asked again what, our take is on that, and I'm assuming that we're going to try to get a reoccurring allocation, at least as we get through these different projects that we have. So we can discuss that in another meeting, but I thought I'd bring that up. We'll probably have some discussion on the 26th meeting of September. So, we might be a little bit longer on that particular meeting, but I think these are all important
Chloe's
things.
still driving that bus?
Pardon me?
Chloe, is she still
Yes.
driving the bus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Amongst everyone, I think, because I think, a lot of you all, and I know Commissioner Campo with that, getting that allocation, everybody, did their
Yeah,
best job to maneuver through it.
but she's
Whether we-
contracted to do it, is my point.
Yes.
So could I just follow up to my question?
Sure, I'm sorry.
No, you gave great information. My specific question was the 3.25 and the 13.9, how much of that will be spent on the non-underground, so the paving and the stormwater? I would think 3.25 under stormwater improvements would be stormwater improvements. So the 13.9, is some of the 13.9 for the two pipes that we just did, that we just approved, the interlocals, or is that not included in that?
I don't believe that's included in that. I think
Okay.
this is more the
So-
project.
Okay, so 13.9 is the Phase 2, Phase 3, right?
You used it, I didn't.
I'm making it easy on you.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yeah, real quick, back to the expense discussion. I was just sitting here thinking, and when you're referencing the increase in the taxes, and our wonderful finance director, Mariah, works on this every day, so you really know that. What in your opinion, are the expenses that have gone up? Obviously, we're not going to hold this to you, but or hold you to this, better on a day-to-day, and you kind of get a feel for what's going up and why, and I'm sure it's all justified, but we could just ask you also, what are the areas, the expenses you feel were the ones that were using up some of that new money?
We've got, so Sewalls Point is very, it's a very, I'm stuck on a word.
Special.
No, it is a special place.
We're all,
There's
Like-
lots of adjectives.
said I was special. She was right.
I feel like the budget coming in and from an outside, point and stuff, it's truly, it's just the contracts that we have, for instance, we've got, and the chief can speak to this, it's like our server stuff that's going to be going on, that is going to be going up.
So technology.
Yeah,
is short.
technology, that's the word I
Come
couldn't
up,
find.
Okay.
Um,
And then we also, with that technology, and again,
Sure.
I'm just trying to cut to the chase here a little bit, but, I think I mentioned to you about our cameras and our tasers that the police officers use. They've changed that whole technology, so what we have is out of date, and now they're on a subscription basis. So there is an increase there in having those items. Obviously, the taser is a useful, self-defense weapon for our officers, and it's not lethal. And the same thing with the cameras. We want to, keep the camera, documentation for evidence purposes and evaluation purposes and all the things that go in with that.
So, yeah.
Did I cover it?
Well, you did, and I was going to say, I mean, one of the new expenses that, you do have that you haven't had in the past is $150,000 is, the loan payment.
That's a good point.
So
Yeah.
that's a chunk of change there. What I was going to say is the budget's, to me, really streamlined. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of fluff per se. And
But I mean, generally, it's a 5%, you're proposing a 5% raise for all staff?
Yes.
Okay. And last year, we did, while we're on that topic, a discretionary. They split the amount that was a merit pay versus a straight pay. That was Dan Hudson's. Are we going to do that this year?
That was the proposal that you all saw. It was, I just combined it as 5, but it's 2.5 and 2.5.
Okay. So that's a big one, 5% of
Yeah,
total.
Yeah, it's
salary.
just to your point about telling people what is the change? What are we spending money on? It's good to ask you because you're doing this every single day and seeing the changes and all that stuff, so.
And one of the things that I'll point out, I mean, because it does stand out in the building department, and you might see it's also in the general fund department. We did put money aside, and it's under office supplies, for basically desk and flooring. And one of the things that we just had happen recently is
The floor started coming up.
the floor is coming up.
It's maintenance stuff that we have to do in the building, and as we talked about, the air conditioning and, all those things, we just have to keep it running. And
So-
this is the building we have, so
Well, that was helpful, thank you.
Commissioner Fender?
Yeah, I was just going to say, from my perspective, this page, Fund 301, sort of answers the question you led with, James. This, to me, 17.6 is what you have allocated for capital projects. Now, my concern now is for 2025. I'm not looking at the balance sheet. Do we have the reserve fund still intact, or what? Is there anything left over if we spend 17.6?
Well, you have to remember, the majority of this 17.6 is going to be based on grants.
Yeah, no, I see.
So-
I see where I allocated so I guess that goes back to a previous question. How comfortable do you feel with 17.6? I mean, it's in your budget. To me, this capital projects fund says we're
The-
going to generate 17.6 in revenue, so.
So what I can say, the town has been very successful with getting grants.
Well, let me
and-
ask you a different way. Which of these line items is not yet approved? Which one has, what's the risk?
Do I have, let me, one second.
steps for all of the stuff,
Well, I see I know we have 8.4. It's already been approved, right? I mean,
right, 8.4 for the sewer.
yeah.
And
I
we
assume
do have
it's
money,
resiliency, right?
well, it's a resiliency grant, but it's earmarked for the sewer
And there
system,
was
and then
that
there's
there
another,
was that 3.2 or whatever for the road project resiliency money.
right,
That must be in the 4.9, right?
So
That's HMP.
if we go back, I included the capital revenues.
Okay.
In the budget in a brief document. And in that, I had a section, I broke out the revenues, basically that grants are already awarded, and then I had a future grants to be determined to help kind of delineate what we currently have been awarded versus.
That was last meeting?
Could you send that again tomorrow or the next
Yeah,
day?
that'd be interesting to know.
yeah, and
But-
we'll also make sure that you have a copy of it for the
I,
But
well, I-
next budget meeting. You have copies for
I-
everybody?
if you guys, yes.
You could email it, it's okay.
Oh, if she's got it, yeah, hand it out.
Okay, what page? I guess,
But,
but it's upside down, but,
I would assume if we're going to approve a $17.6 million capital projects budget, the assumption is that if it's not attained, 17.6 million in revenue, I would assume that the expenditure, certainly in the $13.9 million expenditure column, would also reduce itself
Yes,
simultaneously.
that's correct.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend the money unless
Right.
we don't have
Yeah.
the budget, the
I-
grant money coming in. And as you, I'm sorry.
I suspect that will be significantly less than that, how much we don't spend money as quickly as everybody thinks we do. It
I
takes-
know.
It takes a while.
That's-
No, it takes a while to spend
Well,
13 million bucks.
And just like, we're dealing with, HMGP, the FEMA folks, it just takes so darn long to even get design work approved. And we've been fighting since I've been here, and that's a year, over this one section of our project.
What page were you referring to?
Page 19.
I have page 197.
Oh, you're, okay, you
Yeah.
got the whole.
Page 18, I see P18, I see P19, is that what you mean?
Yeah. He has a different, he has the old packet.
Oh.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, this way we're all on the same page.
Maybe. Do you have one?
Do you need one?
No, that's okay, go ahead.
Okay.
14, so there's 17.6. I
So
see where you're getting
P19?
17.6.
Okay.
Daddy like.
So you'll see at the, how I broke out the revenues for the capital improvement plan was, first off, like the millage, the awarded grants, and then grants to be determined.
This is good.
So that way,
Future grants?
future grants,
So there, it looks like there's 2.1 in the hopper, possibly being awarded in 2024, that not, but I heard him say 4 million earlier, right? There's other stuff that we've learned since then, maybe?
Correct, we did ask for more. So this was done before we actually physically asked for more. So,
All right.
so once again, I guess the best way to look at it, it's a
But that wouldn't come in 2024 anyway, right? That would be a 2025 thing.
Some of it would be 2024, we're hoping,
All right.
because depending on where our bids are on the primary project that we're doing from Pineapple to Ridgeland, you know, we got to be prepared in case they come out
I love this.
increase. So
Well done.
I'd rather turn away grant money if we don't need it. And so we're looking at both FEMA and DEP. Sorry.
Okay.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yeah, you know, when, assuming everyone has asked everything, I was just going to make a motion to approve resolution number 965, adopting the
second.
tentative budget.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Yes.
Commissioner Fender?
Yes.
Okay, great job,
Thank you.
great job. We're,
Great job.
both
Thanks
of you,
for
I'm sorry.
drilling in there, James. That was
Yeah,
good.
and,
And you all, too. I mean, it's great questions.
you know, I think as we look through this, and it doesn't matter how many times you look through it, you're always going to have additional questions the next time, so feel free to, you know, contact Mariah or Bob, you know, so that we can, because they can do some of this breakdown that I think you're looking for, that I know you did it for me last year when I didn't understand the percentages, so
Mariah's very helpful.
that's right. Okay, there any staff closing comments?
Is that
Think-
965 or 964?
Oh.
965.
We lost our attorney.
You just,
Um,
Oh, yeah, 965.
If I,
I'm sorry, did I?
965. Did I say it wrong?
I don't know.
I said 965.
It's been so long since we did 964, I can't
No,
remember.
you said 965.
Okay.
Okay.
if
We did
if I
them
can
both, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
kind of tell you what Glenn and I are working on currently, and it came up today. We deal obviously with state law and our local ordinances. Well, under our code enforcement board, I think you all are well aware of the procedures. It's a 5-member board, and there's 5 alternates, and each one of you pick one. And a resident actually brought it to my attention, the state law, and I've, you know, read it probably 1,000 times dealing with code boards all over, you know, different jurisdictions. But it, you know, I think the resident was right in saying that the law only allows for 2 alternates to be chosen, not the 5. So I've asked Glenn to look into it. He did a cursory thing, and he says that the resident might be right, but we'll have a proposal back to you at the meeting on the 26th. So, but just to kind of let, you know, give you an idea of what's going on.
Do you have it?
Code board.
Do you have it to read? Can you read it to us, or do you not have it?
I don't have it here in front of me because I didn't have it on the agenda and I didn't want to talk about it if we don't put it on the
It
agenda.
just seems strange that you'd be like, not 5 alternates, but 2 if they're alternates.
Right.
I think a
I'll-
regular member makes sense.
I'll
but
send it
yeah.
out to you because I have it, I sent it to Glenn today, so I'll just forward you the email I sent to Glenn to everybody. So
Okay.
you all are on the same page.
Okay, are there any additional comments from the commission?
So our next 2 meetings are Tuesday, September 19th at 6 PM, and Tuesday, September 26th at 6 PM. Is that correct?
That's correct. The one on the 19th will be the final millage rate vote and the final budget vote. So on the 26th, we'll be back to regular business.
And I was hoping that the 26th meeting gives a little more input on the memo you wrote on the gas line.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened there.
I meant to mention
The
that.
last time we talked about this, they were soliciting whether, people wanted it or not, and now you're talking about the line, and there must have been something that happened in between
Did
that
I see the memo?
just didn't figure out.
Was there a memo? I didn't see it. Did I see a memo? What memo?
Well, we
came
did
out
the memo
today,
when
I
it was
think.
on an agenda, and then today,
Oh, you
I
guys
think I
sent it.
just sent it to you for right now.
Oh, you did?
But
Okay.
yes, so I'll forward that to everybody too. But again, it's got to be an agenda item before we can't really discuss it at a special meeting. But just under my comments to you, I've been after them. It's on our strategic plan that, we wanted to have the gas line. And I usually, nip at the ankles a little bit. And I've been doing that with the gas folks. And they decided that they're not going to do Rio. They're going to come down from Jensen Beach, down Indian River Drive to Sewalls Point, and go to the end of High Point with their main line.
Wow.
So, and I had a meeting today with the engineer that's going to be doing the line. I've communicated that with Joe, and Joe and I have a meeting tomorrow. That's one of the topics to kind of discuss, because they want to make sure they don't conflict with any of the items that we're doing. But they would like to get this underway before the end of the year.
And I've
Quick, sorry.
Go ahead.
To the mayor's point, and I know we need to discuss it later, but you make it sound like it's already happening.
Well, they're on board. They have the money. They're ready to do it. So I figured since it's on our strategic plan, we're not paying anything. They're paying for it. They're a public utility.
I have more questions. I'm not personally a big fan
Typically,
of
there's a
gas.
contract with the town that's a portion of revenue, right?
Yes. But I don't think it's that much on gas.
I don't think so.
There's always
I
a
don't think,
percentage.
this is,
I know there's bottled gas that you get. If somebody was selling bottled gas here, we would get a
Why
portion of the
wouldn't there
revenue.
be
That's different.
I mean, for every utility that comes through, there's a little bit there's a
A
percentage.
franchise?
Yes,
fee,
or something, yeah.
Let me look into that. And
Franchise
when we-
agreement, I think, is what we're
when I
talking
bring it up at our
FPL
regular meeting
certainly
on
has
the
it.
26th, I'll have all the answers for you.
yeah, because I don't think we have any, it's great they're putting in the line for, sounds like they're putting in the line for free.
Well, they should. They're going to get money forever.
Wondering about, well, yeah, but that doesn't necessarily the way Martin County feels about sewer.
Doesn't matter.
But I'd also like to get an idea if they're going to put some laterals in and what they're going to cost for, connection fees. And
Yeah.
and sometimes, what we used to do is, depending upon the number of appliances you were willing to hook up to gas, they would not necessarily charge you anything for a
Right.
connection fee.
Well, like I said, Glenn's going to be doing a thorough research on that project. And,
Absolutely.
He'll have a report for you.
Along with the 6
26th.
other things that we mentioned when you're out. All pages, right?
Second reading on trees is coming next time?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Like I said, it's going to be a long.
I thought we were done with that.
Any other,
That's what I was afraid they thought.
any other comments from the commission? Motion to adjourn?
So moved. See you next week.
Thank you for your patience,
We're
everyone.
adjourned, thanks.